Ready, set,
Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Rich Dotson, here with my fellow nerds, Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
And Garret Price.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going so swell as we podcast remotely this week. A lot of snow out there. If you're interested in building snowmen, snow castles, or even snow continents, that's how much snow we have. It's very, very possible. I have an amusement park in my front yard for how many mountains of snow I have. I hope nobody moves in because we have duplexes out there. It's insane.
There's a lot. You guys
got way more than me.
Yeah, we got crushed, man. I couldn't even get out of my whole driveway at all on Monday. So, yeah, it was pretty much buried.
Yeah, I went to work and came right back. I was like, this is stupid. One lane on the freeway. Like, I could do better than this with my life. I'm going home. This is bad. So, we're back today. We're talking some Dynasty sells. We're doing NFC here on the free show. On the Nerd Herd show, we're doing AFC, which I had a really, really hard time with. I'll explain my process on that show. It was an intriguing process of many hours of my life that I cannot get back. But we'll talk about it. It's a weird time right now. It's a weird time to sell. To get value back. It's because we talk about all the time in season. Like, it's hard to get draft picks right now because people are really excited for the rookie draft. The season's over, so players are officially now 1 year older into their career. So some running backs have taken a dip. Some players have taken a dip. So values have depreciated. In a matter over the last 3 weeks, players have depreciated because it doesn't matter what their age is now. It's going to be what their age is 8-9 months from now and how much tread they have on their tires. So we're going to talk about some guys that we think still have some value to sell, that we think are good sells. And remember, when you say the word sell, it's kind of like when you rank somebody. It doesn't mean you dislike the player. It's just like, it's how you play Dynasty. It's about getting out at the right time. When you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, there's two ways for the most part to better your Dynasty team, and pretty much only two ways possible, because the waiver wire should be absolutely depleted in all your leagues. It's either through your rookie draft or through trades. And that's the way to do it. And the best way to do it is not only to draft right, but selling at the right opportunity for players. Just like buying is. That's why we did our last show of buys. Buy, sell, draft, right? That's Dynasty Fantasy Football. When people say, hey, can you summarize like Dynasty Fantasy Football in a nutshell of like what's the most important information? I'm like, here's the three most important topics always in Dynasty. Who to buy, who to sell, who to draft. That's it. That's the core of Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you could do those three things corresponding, like all at the same time, and do it well, you're going to win many, many championships or be in many championship games. So we're going to get some guys here at NFC. Before we do, I got to tell you guys about my friends over at DynastyDepot.com. You got to get over there and check them out. They opened up last week on the 14th. We told you to get in there and get hot, get heavy, because they already had some really good teams go up. I saw over 1,000. It was like $1,000 or $1,100 team go for $200.
Wow.
On FFPC.
Dang.
$200 for a $1,200 team buy-in. What a discount! And right now, if you use the promo code NERDS, you go to DynastyDepot.com. You can buy yourself up as many Dynasty teams as you seem fit. There's going to be some bargains there. You might have to overpay a little bit for a championship caliber team, but you're going to find a Dynasty team that you like at DynastyDepot.com. And the big thing here is we say buy good teams. From here till August, September, like, you have an opportunity to go to FFPC, and if you're a really good startup drafter, like I consider myself usually a pretty good startup drafter when it comes to Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you're really good at that, you can probably just go in, buy in the leagues, draft a team, and go right to DynastyDepot.com and then sell your team for a profit of what you just bought in for. So say you buy in for a $500 team, or just say a $100 team, and you draft the most bombastic team possible, right? And you put on Dynasty Depot, and you can sell it for $200 because you have a very good chance to win in. You just made 100% profit by doing what we all love to do, and that's startup drafts. You know what I mean? So DynastyDepot.com offers all of that. If you use the promo code NERDS, you can get a huge discount of 70% off for the $14.99 for the year for the platform. And again, this is going to give you the opportunity to buy and sell teams on FFPC. And remember, all the teams that you have, it doesn't matter what the buy-in, you accumulate points for, and eventually you get to play in the FFPC championship, and that's for like $500,000. So much good things going over at dynastydepot.com. Check them out, promo code NERDS. So, now what I found myself doing here is I kept finding players that I was like, okay, I'm going to sell him for where he finished or where his ADP was. And we used our Dynasty mock draft tool, ADP, look at all our ADP on this. And I kept, like, some guys like Kyler Murray. I was like, okay, I think Kyler Murray's a good sell in Superflex. And then I spent about an hour of my life researching them and coming up with ways to make my point, and I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. Like there's not many. Yeah, I think Kyler Murray, they have some question marks about him, but at his 24, like, yeah, I'll just roll with him. I'm not selling him. So I'm going to stick with Kyler Murray because I was trying to find a path to get, like, Deshaun Watson for Kyler Murray. I would still do that, honestly. I would sell Kyler Murray for Deshaun Watson. And if I get a little bit plus, I would need plus, actually, until he's cleared to come back, but I would want him because you got to remember Deshaun Watson was money in 2020. But he's not on my list anymore. So even though because he finishes quarterback 10 this year, that's okay. It's all right. You missed a couple games. You're still quarterback 400 points per game basis.
It's okay.
I was trying to find his stats with and without DeAndre Hopkins. I was like, this still not going to work for me.
Yeah, he's still pretty good.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that, like, I think he's always going to be a good enough quarterback that he's going to have, a starting job. Somebody's always going to believe in him. And he is also one of those quarterbacks that outperforms from a fantasy standpoint what he probably does in the real world slightly. So he's always going to be a good fantasy quarterback from that respect, I believe.
Yeah, I just don't like how he doesn't elevate the players around him. Like, he's a really good fantasy quarterback, and he's got a really good arm, but, like, he doesn't, like, I mean, they invested multiple second-round picks in receivers, and, like, he's not making any of those guys significantly better. Like, then you lose DeAndre Hopkins. Like, nobody's doing significantly better with Kyler Murray.
Well, I think you're always going to be working around the fact that he's a little short guy that's 5'11" that has to find windows and move around to make plays, and he's going to find out. I mean, when he's moving around, most of the time, his best option is going to just be to run.
For your life.
Yeah, for your life. Get down.
But that's not your sell, though, right, Rich?
It's not my sell.
Okay, after all that talk, I just wanted to clarify.
I tried to find a way, but don't do it. Okay. Hold on. So my first sell is going to be Aaron Jones, running back for the Green Bay Packers. Currently has an ADP of 57.3, running back 11 in 15 games this year. Averaged 15.3 points per game, which was 13th best for Aaron Jones. But the big thing here I was looking at is the second half of the season and that usage of A.J. Dillon. Now, A.J. Dillon has seen his ADP skyrocket because of this. I mean, he's jumped up. And, rightfully so. This is the guy they drafted in the second-round pick, even though they just paid Aaron Jones. Between weeks 1 through 9, Aaron Jones was running back 8 on the year. But weeks 10 through 18, the second half of the season, A.J. Dillon was running back 12. Aaron Jones was running back 29. This was a guy who only had more than 20 fantasy points in PPR leagues 4 times last year. He played in 15 games. His 11.4 attempts per game were 3 less than he averaged the last 2 years. I know his 65 targets were right on par with what he's done before. Under half his games, he averaged a score at best where, like, he had just an average score, like 10, 12, 13 points in those. And in 25% of his games, he had under 10 points in those games. So there's kind of a downtick there for Aaron Jones. And this might come off as like, yeah, no crap, Sherlock. Aaron Jones is a sell. A.J. Dillon did well. But this was a guy that still, I was looking at his ADP. I was looking at his Dynasty rankings on Dynasty Nerds, Dynasty Trade Calculator. Like, I was going around seeing where everybody else had him. And he's still considered a high-end running back there and running back 1. So to me, I still like Aaron Jones, but I don't know how long his future has of being a top-tier running back because that's what he was and that's what he drafted him for. And you're just not getting it. You didn't get it this past year for him. So if I can move Jones for like a 23 first, maybe a third on top of that, honestly, if I can move him for like some guy, like if I can get Elijah Mitchell right now for Aaron Jones plus, I'm doing that all day long. I think Elijah Mitchell is one of my – I wish I had him on the show last week. I'm after watching that playoff game, I've never been more convinced that Elijah Mitchell's the man there for 2022. I think it's one of the best values in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And you know what? Let's flip the script. Let's make this a buy show. Let's buy Elijah Mitchell.
Buy Elijah Mitchell. I mean, Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson and somebody else is a free agent this year. So it's going to be Elijah Mitchell. It's going to be Trey Sermon next year. Who knows if they bring one of those guys back on a deal. So, yes, go buy Elijah Mitchell. I don't care what the title of the show says. If it says sell, we're buying people today.
So, wait, so far, just to clarify. We're buying someone and we're spending time talking about the guy we're not selling.
Yeah.
So far on this show.
Well, you're right on point so far.
You keep your mouth shut when you're talking to me, Garrett.
Yeah. So I'm just talking about so if I'm flipping Aaron Jones, I think you can get Elijah Mitchell plus for Aaron Jones, and that plus, I'm happy with the 23 second. Honestly, if you give me Elijah Mitchell in a second,
and Elijah Mitchell might be exactly what Aaron Jones was, a late round draft pick that kind of fell into a situation and is going to beat out the guy that was ahead of him, drafted in the same exact year, just like Aaron Jones did, except for Trey Sermon. But now he's however many years younger, 4 years younger than Aaron Jones. So yeah, if you can make that kind of maneuver, that's a great move, I think, for Aaron Jones. And you mentioned, Aaron Jones is, I think, an easy sell, but we had him on this show last year as a sell because we saw signs down the road that he's going to have a cliff coming, or there's going to be somebody else coming in as competition in AJ Dillon, and he's maintained the running back 1 status. He was running back 8 overall through week 17, so he still holds a ton of value. But get out now, like you mentioned, Rich, because AJ Dillon he really kind of took a big leap forward, even in the passing game, which I don't think any of us saw that coming towards the end of the season this year.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I would definitely be willing to sell Aaron Jones. And honestly, we'll get to it when we get to my sells, but anybody that's kind of at that point in their career as a running back, I think if you can get even halfway decent value. You mentioned the 23 first plus. I would be willing to take a 23 first straight up. Just give me the 23 first. I don't even need to ask more questions about where it's at in the class or whatever. Just give me the first. Give me it in 22. Give me wherever. I want to get out. I don't want to be stuck holding the bag. And that's kind of what I'm a little bit worried about with Aaron Jones is I'm afraid that I'm going to be the guy stuck holding the bag.
Yeah, and that's the last thing we're going to do in Dynasty. And again, I still think he holds value as a high-end running back, too, probably going in for 2023 season. But I'm just trying to, like I said, I'm trying to flip and get younger. I mean, I feel that way about all running backs. They all got to go at this age. I think Alvin Kamara fits in that role as well. Like, hey, Alvin, you got to go. I know you're 26. I know you've been a running back one every single one of your career, but I think it's about time you head off there. And I'm targeting guys that we had on our buy show last week, J.K. Dobbins. I would take J.K. Dobbins straight up for Aaron Jones easily. I would love to get Travis Etienne for Aaron Jones easily. I would take Elijah Mitchell easily. And I would try to finagle a way to find Calvin Ridley for a guy like Aaron Jones as well. I think he still holds that kind of value for a team that needs a running back. And I think a team that needs a running back that has a contender, like obviously you're targeting a contender here for Aaron Jones, they're going to realize come draft day that they can't get a quality running back there at the back end of the first round. So Aaron Jones might be right up their alley because Garrett said he'll take a late 22 first for him. I'd want to see who was there first, and if that's the case, I'd rather just get their 23 first and let them keep their 22 first.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you.
And which usually when you're a contender and you can keep your first this year and bring in Aaron Jones, you're way more willing to give away that 23 first. You're like, it's going to be a late 23 first, just like this one is anyways. And you just never know. So that's my first sell. Aaron Jones, like you said, Garrett, all these guys that are 26, 27 at running back.
Time to go.
Time to go. Got those fresh legs. Man, who do you got?
That brings me to my guy. Speaking of not getting held with the bag here, we mentioned him earlier, I think, in this season as a sell as well, but I'm gonna put him back out there again. James Conner, 26 years old, finished the year, through week 18 as running back 5 in PPR, and he did it really based off of the strength of him scoring 18 total touchdowns, 15 rushing, 3 receiving.
Garret Blount.
Yeah, he totally had a Garret Blount type of year. And right now he's going 102nd right now in ADP. So it's like halfway through the 8th round in 12-team in 12-team leagues. So he's still holding some pretty good value, and people are, they're still seeing him as this guy that can do it. But for me personally, I've always been skeptical of James Conner kind of having a long career. I mean, just everything that he went through even before he got to the NFL level, having fought cancer and all that kind of stuff. It always was in the back of my mind that, hey, he's a fighter, that's great, but I'm not sure this guy's going to have the longest career ever. And he also has this kind of trend towards the end of at least the past 3 seasons, 2019, 2020, and 2021, of missing large chunks of the season. He did the same exact thing this year. When you needed him the most in the playoffs, he was out again. So, if you had him on your team, you're likely disappointed because he wasn't there for at least part of your playoff run. Who knows? It might have been the full thing if you got knocked out because you didn't have James Conner in your lineup. So I think it's a perfect storm to kind of get this guy off your roster. He still has a hot name. He's still he's just coming off this hot season where he scored 18 touchdowns, and he did his 37. He's always good for about 30 to 35 receptions a year. He outdid himself. He went 37 this year, and he's just a guy that. The cliff is coming for this guy. He's a free agent. Him and Chase Edmonds are both free agents. Who knows what their situation is going to be next year? It could be a situation where he's straight up in a timeshare and he's not having this monster season where Chase Edmonds was down and he got this huge role that he wouldn't normally have like he did this year. So it's just a perfect storm for me to sell a guy like James Conner.
I think
that's exactly what. Oh, go ahead, Rich.
I was gonna say, I think he's a good player to he's a good name to have, like when you're going for a quality name, like to throw in with your first. We're like,
yeah,
hey, I want J.K. Dobbins. I'll give you James Conner and my first.
And that's the kind of trades the kind of trades in our trade finder was like James Conner 2 seconds, Elijah Mitchell. Or there was one that was crazy, a first and a second for James Conner straight up. So I mean he's got some pretty solid value still in our trade finder. So it's one of those things where if you're getting the high end stuff for him, it's an easy sell. And if you're not, maybe it's a tougher league that kind of doesn't, they see it the same way I see it. He still is a nice player to have as a piece to get maybe a long-term option at the running back position.
Well, anytime you have running backs with a murky future, those are fun ones to buy when they're low-name guys that didn't just come off a big season. You're paying thirds or maybe even getting frisky and paying like a late second to get some of those kind of like guys in murky situations that could emerge. That's basically where you're at with James Conner. He's in a murky situation. He could emerge somewhere. Might not be Arizona. It might be somewhere else. He could be back in Arizona. He could be back with Edmonds. He could be back with another running back that they draft. Like we just don't know. But if you're having to pay a premium for a guy in a murky situation, that's a risk that's just not worth it. And you mentioned Chase Edmonds this year. Through 6 games when he was healthy, the first 6 games, Chase Edmonds was actually leading that team in fantasy points, not James Conner. And it was because of those injuries and all of that where Edmonds didn't come back till the tail end of the season. He was back, week 13, 14, something like that. So it wasn't till the tail end of the season that he came back. And obviously at that point, Conner was pretty well established with how that season had gone.
Well, but that's when Conner got injured. Conner got injured week,
right.
I think it was 15 and 16 or 16 and 17, one of those two.
Right.
So that's when Chase Edmonds kind of reemerged and did well again. So it does. That adds even more uncertainty to the situation because who knows what the coaching staff even who they actually prefer out of those two. So, I mean, I have no idea, and no one will know until free agency hits and they pay somebody, or maybe they pay them both and they like what they have there with that combination. Well, I guess we'll find out.
I like that trade you said first when you were like, oh, Elijah Mitchell or James Conner in 2 seconds for Elijah Mitchell. I like that one a lot. But I think that's a really good move on Conner, is just that package deal with picks to Denver right now, because picks are really enticing. They'll get the player that you really want. So, Garrett, who do you got?
All right, I'm going to move over to the wide receiver position, and I'm going to go with DK Metcalf as my sell. And at first you're like, wait, Garrett. Typically the theme of these shows is older running backs or older players in general. You're talking about a guy that just had his third season and is currently in our ADP. He's currently wide receiver 8. Why are you selling DK Metcalf? Well, he had a little bit of a James Conner effect at wide receiver this season. DK Metcalf was actually 4th in the NFL in touchdowns with 12, which was the most of his career. However, despite having so many touchdowns, he only finished as wide receiver 14, only had one game this season over 100 yards receiving. So wasn't nearly productive as he was before. And that wide receiver 14 was with him playing all 17 games. There were plenty of guys right behind him that had missed 2 or 3 games, like Chris Godwin and different players. Adam Thielen was behind him. But on a points per game basis, he'd be ahead of him. So he was closer to 20 on a true points per game basis, if we're looking at it that way. We also have the question of Russell Wilson's future. We don't know what's going down. Now, if I had to guess today, I do think Russell Wilson will be back with Seattle next year. But we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of rumors out there. There's a lot of rumors about Pete Carroll that, they even thought about maybe getting rid of him this year, but he's such a legend that they couldn't just do that. And, so this could be the writing on the wall of the last year of his career. And there could be a messy divorce between Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. And if that happens, that does definitely change DK Metcalf's value. We saw that a little bit when Geno Smith was in there. Things didn't look good for DK Metcalf during that time. And the last thing for me is these last 5 games were all about Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny's resurgence into relevancy really made things interesting. Now, DK Metcalf did have one game in there that was a good game. He had a 3-touchdown game during that time where Penny had his big 5-game breakout. But outside of that, he only had one other touchdown in the other 4 games. In all of those other games, he had under 60 receiving yards, and he never had more than 6 catches. So I could see them actually doing what Pete Carroll wants to do and committing to the running game, running the football, and that's just going to mean less opportunities for a guy like DK Metcalf. So I am a little bit worried, and this is not to say that I think DK Metcalf is a bad player. Kind of like what you said in the beginning, Rich. I'm not just selling him for anything, but I don't think he is a wide receiver 1 like he is being drafted. I think he is a more fantasy whack-a-mole that Matthew Berry calls it, where one week he's got these, 28 points and you're living a high life, and then the next week he's got 8 and you're really, really frustrated. I think he's going to yeah, it sounds like a lot like his other teammate. I think he's going to be more of that wide receiver 2, which is fine, but I would rather get the return of that wide receiver 1 value.
Yeah, I think if you get like a Jalen Waddle for him, that'd be great.
You might even be able to get Waddle plus, honestly.
Yeah. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
According to our ADP, Waddle is down roughly at like wide receiver 16 or something like that. So you might even be able to get Waddle plus.
Well, going back to the points, the varying points. I mean, that's another reason to sell Aaron Jones, because he's very similar in that respect as well. I have 3 or 4 huge games, but a lot of the time the filler in between is very rough. Yeah, and you have
25% under 10 points. That's not good enough.
Right. I mean, and you look at DK Metcalf's numbers, and they're just like that. I mean, there's some 5-point games, 2-point games, 7-point games, 8-point games, 11-point games, and then there's that monster like you were talking about, 3-touchdown game where he's over 30 points, and another 26-point game, another 22-point games. So it's very up and down. You're riding the roller coaster for sure with a guy like DK Metcalf, and that's the numbers look good at the end of the year, and where he finishes looks good, and that's all the more reason to sell him, I think. So yeah, that along with the I think the biggest point is the uncertainty surrounding Russell Wilson. If it's not this year, it's next year. I think for sure that he's got to be out of there. So he just seems like a guy that's unhappy. I think there's going to be a lot of turnover at the quarterback position this coming off season. It's going to be a kind of a musical chairs who lands where type of situation. And I think Russell Wilson's right in the middle of all of that. So if that ball gets rolling and Seattle ends up staying with Pete Carroll and John Schneider, which it sounds like they're going to for this year, I could definitely see a scenario where he's out the door and DK Metcalf has, I think, significantly less value without Russell Wilson throwing him the ball downfield, and because that's what he's good at. He's good at making plays downfield. He's good at making those big splash plays. He's not as good of a technician, in the intermediate routes and that part of the field, where it takes a special kind of quarterback that's willing to do that, and Russell Wilson is. So we'll see exactly what his value is, but I would think it's significantly less without Russell Wilson throwing him the ball.
Yeah, great points by both of you guys. So, yeah, I feel really good about that. So let's move on, because I have nothing to add to that. You guys I agree with you guys 100%. And I've kind of never been a huge DK guy as it is. So if I could move DK for a guy like I mentioned before, Jalen Waddle plus, or honestly, just about anybody plus or anybody, I'd be moving DK Metcalf.
Yeah, and once again, predictionstrike.com, the most wonderful app ever. You can go to the website, you can do all of this stuff, but what you get to do is you get to go on there. You say like, hey, I really like Javonte Williams because he's great. So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to look at Javonte Williams, and I don't know what his stats are going to be, but I just have a feeling that he's going to have a really good career. I'm going to try to get some shares of a guy that I really, really like. And that's what you get to do. It's just like the stock market. You get to buy, sell, trade stocks of these players just like you would if you were on Wall Street. Better yet, you want to get that Javonte share for absolutely free? Put in the promo code Dynasty. You get a free share with your first deposit of $20 or more with the promo code Dynasty. That's at predictionstrike.com.
Oh, love it. Love it. So let's move on to my next guy here. And my next guy is somebody I've said to sell multiple times. So he's an easy sell here. Back again. I was going to do another running back, like I was going to make a strong case for Alvin Kamara, but when I was looking at his ADP and where he sits, and the big thing that got me here was when the coach came out and said that Jalen Hurts is our starting quarterback for 2022. I think I gave him a huge boost in value in Dynasty, and I still don't believe in Jalen Hurts as a long-term answer. I think the fact that he come out and cement that he's your quarterback going next year, that says volumes as it is. People were asking questions like, is he your quarterback going forward? Gardner Minshew looked a little good out there as well. So to me, Jalen Hurts, ADP of 26.7, was QB9 last year in 15 games. 21.41 points per game was sixth best overall of quarterbacks. But again, this is something that does it with his legs. He had 748 rushing yards. That was 23rd most in the entire NFL. So he was a low-end running back too when it comes to his rushing yards. His arm, to me, is just not sustainable to be a high-end quarterback. He's going to rely on his legs, and that juice will just end up running out here. And I think he's right now, with how hot of a season he just had, with that cement of saying, hey, he's our quarterback right now, that you can go out and probably try and trade for Deshaun Watson. And, a year removed from playing NFL, I just want to remind people, and this is barring all, he gets through all his legal situations and everything that I read about it, it seems to me that there's a 99.99% chance he's playing the NFL in 2022. It seems like he's going to settle out of these cases as it is. And, whichever your opinion on the guy is, whether he's a good guy, a bad guy, we're here to win fantasy football championships. And that's, same thing we say, same thing about Tyreek Hill, Adrian Peterson, Joe Mixon. A lot of these guys are not good people. But that's not what we're here to do. We're trying to win fantasy football championships, and these are just pieces of the pie. And, remember in 2020, Deshaun Watson led the entire NFL with almost 5,000 passing yards in 2020 with no hardcore receivers out there. And even if Deshaun Watson's not your flavor of the week, what about Justin Fields? I'm going to move Jalen Hurts for Justin Fields, and I could probably get Justin Fields plus, because when I'm looking at Justin Fields' numbers come up his rookie year, which is not a really good situation to be in with that receiving core. Remember, David Montgomery was banged up early, but Justin Fields had 4 QB1 games and only 9 games that he had over. So there's only 9 games where he had over 15 attempts, right? So out of those 9 games where he had over 15 attempts, he was a quarterback 1 4 times. that puts him in an upper tier when it comes to fantasy football quarterbacks. So extrapolate that over a full season. We're talking about in a rookie year, 8 QB1 games. He would have been the number 1 rookie overall quarterback in the NFL this year. Because the only people that had more than him were Mac Jones and Davis Mills. Obviously, Davis Mills didn't play the whole year, but Mac Jones played the whole year, and he only had 5 QB1 games this year. Davis Mills actually had 5 too, which is pretty crazy of how strong Davis Mills ended. This is another Dynasty buy show. If we're flipping the script, is go buy Davis Mills. Get out there, get up, and get it. So, to me, Jalen Hurts, it's just there's more. To me, there's better long-term upside because that's what we're looking at, right? Long-term upside for Dynasty at quarterback. And some players you can play that short-term window on. Like the running back's easy to do that on. Some of these receivers, how shallow that pool is. I mean, not only how shallow the pool is, but also the longevity of the position. Like you want to secure. One, they're extremely hard to get young quarterbacks. 2, the longevity of the position, like you want to get a guy that you can put back there. Like if Justin Fields hits, if Deshaun Watson comes back and plays, you have another 10 years that you don't have to worry about that position where you have your quarterback 1. So to me, if I have any concerns, there's a lot of red flags for me, then I have to move on from that quarterback. And that's why I was kind of looking at Kyler Murray. Like there's some red flags now for Kyler Murray. It's like, man, this is quarterback 3, quarterback 4 overall. Like if I have some concerns, like I should move. And after doing my research, I was like, I'll stick with Kyler for now. I hope this doesn't bite me in the butt. But for Jalen Hurts, it's like, no, this is peak value. And of course, with a quarterback, I'm not sitting here as a quarterback guru. There's guys that get paid millions upon millions of dollars to figure these guys out, and they can't do it. So me sitting here in my studio doing a podcast that's never played the position, it's impossible to predict these guys long term. The first half of this season, people are like, "Ooh, Pat Mahomes, like, is he going to be okay?" Second half, he's on fire, quarterback 1, everything is hunky dory. So we don't know how these guys are going to translate. Remember, I'm still the biggest Baker Mayfield fan in the world, so it doesn't matter what happens. I'm here. That's my guy. So for me, with as many red flags that Jalen Hurts shows me on that field with his arm on a week in, week out basis, it's hard for me to believe in him long term. So I want to cash out here early, finish off this season where the 6th best points per game, 784 rushing yards, and recoup another quarterback in return, and in some cases probably get a little plus on top. I mean, heck, even if I go in Superflex and just trade for Trevor Lawrence straight up, who just had an awful year, but his last game of the year, Trevor Lawrence looked like Trevor Lawrence in that last game of the year. So if I could somehow, somebody's real depressed about Trevor Lawrence, if I could flip Jalen Hurts into Trevor Lawrence, honestly, I'd flip that to saying, hey, I'll give you Jalen Hurts in my 2nd for Trevor Lawrence. Are you interested? Oh, stop hitting me. Stop hitting me. I was trying to make a trade here. But for me, Jalen Hurts is hey, ho, he's got to go. Yeah, man,
I mean, The comments from the front office kind of threw me off as well, saying, hey, this guy's our quarterback. And I can totally see why that, in your opinion, revives his value and makes him a sell, because it does to me. Before that, there's too much uncertainty. People don't know whether or not he's going to be the man next year. So, you probably saw a little bit of a dip in his value, and then they come out and say, no, he's our guy next year. But I think when you dig into it a little bit, they have got 3 first-round draft picks. They're in the rumors to get Deshaun Watson, right? I mean, they're at least out there as a team that could want him. Of course, you're not going to say, hey, this guy's not good enough to be a starting quarterback if you're about to try to trade him to somebody else. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to look at it from the smokescreen standpoint at this point. Anything the front office says at this point of the year is all smokescreen, in my opinion, because even if they don't end up trading Jalen Hurts, they've got 3 first-round draft picks. Like they could be maneuvering themselves behind the scenes to make a trade up in order to get another quarterback, and they don't want anyone else to know. So you never know the actual motivation of what they're saying out to the public. Is it to actually back him, or is it for other clandestine reasons where they could be working some stuff behind the scenes in order to bring somebody else in at quarterback? So right now I'm using whatever they said And I'm trying to sell Jalen Hurts because I think, obviously wherever he finished, from a fantasy standpoint, I think outweighs his real production as an NFL quarterback. And I think that's kind of how he's always going to go. And it's going to be a matter of time before they figure out that they can do better at the position. And then he's got no value. So you got to get out now, I think, while he's still quote unquote the starter there, and you're still getting, the value, whatever the value is in our trade finder. I'm sure it's through the roof in Superflex. I don't know if either one of you guys have looked that up yet, but I'm sure you're getting some pretty good value there for a guy like Jalen Hurts. So he's definitely a sell in my opinion.
And that earlier what you said too, like besides when he was really close to going to Miami, like I've been on Deshaun Watson going to the Eagles since the NFL draft before. Like there's like they got his draft capital, like give him Jalen Hurts, like it just makes too much sense for him not to go to the Eagles. So go ahead, Garrett.
I'm torn on this one, to be honest, because overall I tend to agree that he is a sell. But the problem that I'm struggling with is you're more than likely trading a quarterback that has proven that he can be a quarterback 1. He was quarterback 9 on the season. He had a very good year overall. He was very consistent, especially in the beginning part of the season there. It was the first year with a brand new head coach. And I think the biggest issue, because in senses I agree, but I just don't know who you're going to get that's established
in Superflex
for him.
In Superflex.
In Superflex. And I think that's the hard part is like, I love Justin Fields, and would I probably trade straight up for him? Probably. But there's a ton of question marks about Fields too, his new head coach. He didn't perform super great in his rookie season. Trey Lance, like those are the kind of guys you're trading for. And so that's the tricky part is you're trading one guy with a host of problems for other guys that also have a lot of maybe not red flags, but yellow flags as well.
What about
overall? I agree,
yeah,
but I
said
struggle.
Deshaun Watson, then Trey Field, then Justin Fields plus is what I said. I think that's what I said. It was a long time ago.
Okay.
What about
if you can get Fields plus, I would do that. Yeah. What's up, Matt?
Never mind.
No,
is that what you were going to ask?
No. Jalen Hurts and Darren Waller for Kyler Murray straight up in the trade finder right now. What side of that are you guys landing on?
Oh, I take Kyler.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, if you're able to get that kind of deal, I think it makes it pretty simple. I think it's a slam dunk, and that's in a Superflex non-tight end premium, so it was just a regular Superflex.
Yeah, so maybe that's the way to do it is put the plus with Hurts and try to get into that safe quarterback tier of Russell Wilson and Lamar and different guys like that.
Or a guy that Rich wants to sell but not really sell because he's actually too good and too
bad. I'll take Kyler all day. Yeah, if I had to give Hurts plus, like I would give, like, just for example, like if I can get Joe Burrow for Jalen Hurts plus my first, you know what I mean? Like if we start there, like hey, I'll give you my first. I have 1.7 and Hurts for Burrow. Hey, look at their average points per game, both averaging this points per game. He was behind. I would do that all day. If I can move him, the upgrade for sure. But and that's the thing. When we talk about trades, like say it in a vacuum, so hard to do because every league's so different. Team structures are so different. But like when I say move, it's easy to say, oh, just Deshaun Watson. But like you said, Garrett, like I'm using him as this is a person I want to move, and I'm gonna find a way to move him. Like it's about finding the right deal to get done. Maybe it's just to make a lateral move. Maybe it's to upgrade. I have to give more. You know what I mean? Like maybe I have to give. Maybe somebody's crazy out there, and I get Josh Allen for Jalen Hurts plus 2 firsts. You know what I mean? Like oh wow, I'm gonna get Jalen Hurts and 2 firsts. Like whatever I have to do. Like I think as a sell, you're saying, and we're gonna talk about the AFC show. Like you want to say a player is a sell because you can sell him to better your dynasty team, right? Like we're not just saying to sell because. Oh, just to have a topic to talk about on a podcast. Like we're trying to make our dynasty teams better here. So these are pieces and guys that we think can make your dynasty team better. It's the biggest problem I had with the AFC North or the AFC altogether was like I feel like a lot of those guys are really right where they need to be in January of 2022. Yeah, so
it's tough.
I think Jalen Hurts falls in that category of like his value goes back again where he is 6 best points per game, QB9 overall. The coaching staff coming out this week saying he's our quarterback. That makes him an asset today, this week, as a good move to better your dynasty team and make those moves. If I can get Deshaun Watson straight up, I am doing it. If I can get Justin Fields plus, I'm doing it. If I had to give more to make a move, like I'm with you, Garrett. Like I'm not trying to get worse at quarterback with a young quarterback at hand. Like if that's the case, I'm just going to ride with Jalen Hurts and take his 785 rushing yards. But if there's any window for me to sell, like I'm looking at every single team in my league in the Dynasty GM. I'm looking at their quarterback values. I'm looking at their other team values, and I'm seeing where there's a path for me to make a trade. Because out of the other 11 teams, there's going to be at least 2 of them where there's a path that's green enough for me to go walk on to try and entertain this offer. So that's how I feel about him. Matt, you're up.
All right, so my next guy is I would call him a hot ticket item,
Ooh.
right? My next guy is Cam Akers, age unknown because I didn't put it on there. I think he's 23 or 22 or 23 or something. He's pretty young. But right now
he's 20-something.
He's 20-something. He's super young. ADP 65 right now, so he's going in the 5th round of startups right now. And obviously, you know, the story behind Cam Akers, I think we all know, but I'll tell it anyway. Cam Akers, at least for us, he was a very polarizing player, you know, coming out of college. Obviously, super athletic, but I feel like when I was watching the tape, he was a guy that seemed to kind of lack the natural instincts of a running back coming out of Florida State there. So, you know, I think it showed itself in his first year. He was a bit slow to start in his rookie season in 2020, and kind of split carries basically with Darrell Henderson the entire season. Showed some glimpses towards the end of the year and did pretty good in the playoffs. And I think that was kind of, you know, the people that liked him coming out and probably are the ones that drafted him early were all excited, right? I mean, you know, the offseason was amazing for Cam Akers owners up until the point where training camp rolled around towards the end of July. He blows out his Achilles, and literally, you know, everyone's jumping off the bandwagon at that point. His ADP took a huge hit. He had almost zero value. You know, people were the trade market for him was, you know, people were just trying to jump ship. You could, you know, probably give a second, get Cam Akers pretty easily at any point during the season. And then videos started to emerge, right? Like, hey, this guy's actually starting to run already on a treadmill. And, you know, there was always kind of like a little background hype about Cam Akers. And, you know, fast forward, you know, 6 months and, you know, all of a sudden he's getting activated in the same season where he tore his Achilles in the preseason. And not only that, you know, this past week he plays in his first game in week 1 of the playoffs, and he actually leads the team in carries 17-13 over Sony Michel. You know, he came up a little bit short, 3 yards short of actually leading the team in rushing. He had 55. Sony Michel had 58. But Sony Michel's first run from scrimmage was like a 40-yard jaunt or something like that. It was a big time run. So he also added a 140-yard reception as well, showing a little bit of explosion. And now the hype around this guy is just it's blowing up. I mean, he's going back in the 5th round of startup drafts already, just after kind of one appearance, and he's almost become like this mythical, you know, unicorn of an athlete that comes back from the Achilles in the same year. And me, I'm still looking at this guy as a super athletic guy that kind of just, he doesn't have the same natural instincts that I want out of all my running backs. So I'm going to use this hype now that he's back and everyone's excited about him and he's going to have a nice little playoff run. I'm going to use that to sell him. And right now I went in the trade finder today, you know, the low end of his trade value that I saw was like a 2022 first. And I'm cool getting that return back for a guy that blew out his Achilles. But there's also other ones on there. Christian Kirk, who's a free agent and you know, showed out pretty well this year, and a first. There's a first, a second, and a third straight up for Cam Akers. And if I'm getting any one of those deals, I'm not even going to hesitate. I'm going to take it. I'm going to move on from a guy, an injured running back, even though he's back and you know, he's playing again. I'm moving on, and I'm just going to upgrade to a younger version of him that's coming out either this year coming up or the next year after.
Yeah, I love that sell. When you posted on the thing, I thought as well, like the hype train right now of him alone and just being coming back from Achilles makes him seem like he's Superman. And now People come out, and like, he showed a little bit of explosiveness coming back already, and kudos to him because that's an amazing accomplishment to come back
Absolutely.
in the same year from an Achilles tear. I mean, look at Deontay Foreman. It took him a couple of years just to get back into any kind of form. So, but to me, a running back, again, like a player that I thought the hype was, he was a sell before he tore his Achilles. Remember? Like, I was like, dude, his hype's too high.
Correct.
Like, he's a sell. I just don't know if he's going to justify his ADP. And right now, that's another skyrocket. Goes right back. Give me if I can switch again. It's the same running backs I'm talking about over and over again. Elijah Mitchell, J.K. Dobbins. Can I flip those guys for them? Can I somehow? Is somebody in love with Cam Akers to get Antonio Gibson? Can I do that? Can I get Kareem Hunt in a first? Like, can that work? Like, what can I do to flip Cam Akers? Matt, you mentioned any first involved and you're happy. I don't think I would take a 22 first, a late 22 first. Just because, as of right now, like I think I'd rather just ride with Cam Akers and see if that value can increase so I can get a higher 23 first. Like I don't want a late 22 first. If anything, if I lose a guy like Cam Akers, I most likely want to recoup another running back because the last thing I want to do is like shallow my running back pool unless it's super deep. So I'm trying to target some other guys that like Travis Etienne, Elijah Mitchell, J.K. Dobbins. I think Kareem Hunt falls in that category for plus. So I think Cam Akers falls in that category again, Matt, of like a huge ADP bump out of like this incredible story. And I'm using that as a situation just like where when a guy gets arrested where there's a dip. You know, I'm taking these unexpected highs, and that high is based off of nothing he's done on the field. Then it's why we said to sell Miles Sanders 2 years ago. When you get a huge jump for nothing you've done on the field, then I've got to sell because it's stupid.
It's based off just him being on the field. You know what I mean? That's it. And it's not like the numbers were extraordinary. I'm personally nervous that he's carrying that much of a workload first game back. I mean, personally, to come out there and lead your team. I know it's only 17 carries, but I mean, an Achilles tear. I mean, to come back that quickly from it too. It just seems like I'm out, Jared. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like get me out of here before this thing pops again. You know, knock on wood that does not happen, obviously. And he is 22, by the way. I just looked it up while we were talking here. But yeah, absolutely, a guy that I'm happy to get out from underneath. You said you wouldn't take a 22 first because it's kind of a lateral move. I'm cool with a lateral move, to be honest, and just getting a fresh start with a new draft pick, a new young player. I'm good with that.
I think I'm a little bit more towards Rich's side on this, even though I do agree the people are desperate for young running backs, and I'm going to touch more on it on the next show, the AFC show, but people are just absolutely desperate for young running backs, and he's a young running back that does present some value. Darrell Henderson, who I don't think is as talented as Cam Akers is, just as raw ability goes, and I mean, he was averaging 17.5 points per game through the first 8 weeks of the season before Sony came in and he started getting banged up and whatnot. So I mean, there's definitely a path for him to have a similar type of season to what that was, but at the same breath, I mean, people are already talking about like, should he be considered as a top 5 running back and all this? And you know, our RDP has him in the 5th round currently in a super flex tight end premium, but there have only been so many drafts since that game happened this past weekend. So if we were able to look at it just from, you know, those 3 days or 4 days or whatever it's been, I guarantee he's jumped a round or two since that point even. So I would definitely sell on that part of it, but I would need a minimum of a first and second to really entertain it.
All right, Garrett, give us your last guy. Wrap us up.
Well, last but not least, we'll go back to the running back position, and I am selling Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook was actually a guy I had talked about selling this past offseason, and part of it was his age. Part of it was I was worried about he just misses time every single season. He doesn't usually miss huge chunks, although his rookie season he did. But since then, it's always 2 and 3 games here, and he usually, you know, one or two of those games he left early in the game, so you got screwed that week because he left in the second quarter and you only got 7 points out of him, that kind of thing. And so I was worried about all those things. And that was kind of true on this season. If you drafted Dalvin Cook, overall, you were probably a little bit disappointed. He ended up being running back 16. Part of that was because he missed some time, but he only averaged 15.9 PPR points per game, which is not very high for a guy like Dalvin Cook. He's also going to be 27 next season. And I don't think people realize that he's that old, but he's going to be 27 next season. At that point, we're talking, the cliff could just hit. We've seen it for a lot of running backs where it's just
27. No,
not 27. It's so old. Now I'm 31.
Yeah. Screw you,
so
Garrett, you're young.
Yeah, I know, right?
You're young bones.
But on top of that, Mike Zimmer's gone.
Yep.
This is going to be a new offense in here. We don't know what that's going to mean. We don't know how much that's going to be run versus pass. We don't know any of that. The new coordinator could be, a guy that's like, hey, let's get Madison more involved, or let's do, there's a lot of different things that could end up happening. And on top of that, this season he had his lowest target rate, his lowest receiving yards, his lowest reception total, and his lowest yards per reception by like 2 full yards. So in the passing game, he wasn't utilized as much. And when he wasn't nearly as effective as he's been in the past. So I think the writing on the wall is there. And all of that to say, he's still currently going as running back 7. So I want to capitalize on a guy that is still viewed as this top end running back that always misses time and is trending in the wrong direction. I would love to sell Dalvin Cook right now if I'm able to capitalize on that RB7 value.
I love all the points you made there, but to put on top of that, don't forget the odd legal stuff that he's got going on as well, where him and I don't want to speculate. Girlfriend, whoever it was, they're like kind of suing each other, or I don't know. It's very odd. It's kind of he said, she said type of stuff going on there, and who knows what that will turn into. It could be absolutely nothing. It could be something that ends up on commissioner's exempt list. We have no idea. So that's even more reason to kind of sell off an older running back, in my opinion. So yeah, I like that sell.
No, good call. I forgot.
All right, and that's our sell episode for this week. And remember, we just added, as we get closer to Senior Bowl coming up, and all these rookie talks, as we get closer to Combine, we just added a ton of all 22 film to the Dynasty Nerds film room, an absolute ton. We got literally so much more to add into it with all 22 film. And you can have the promo code with the Nerd Herd membership. It's literally that you get that and so much more. You get the Dynasty GM tool. You get the Rookie Nerd Score. You get the rankings. You get the Dynasty GM. You get so many tools. But right now, I would say, besides the Dynasty GM, the number one asset we have at DynastyNerds.com is the Dynasty Nerds Film Room. And we're still running that promo here for the podcast listeners with that promo code WINTER. You get 15% off any membership on there. But right now, if you want to get into the rookies and you want to watch film, there's literally not another website on the planet that's going to offer you the best bang for your buck and the best all 22 film than DynastyNerds.com. So use that promo code WINTER for 15% off. And maybe you're somebody that doesn't just pay, maybe you like the podcast, but you're somebody like, what? I'm not paying for subscription services. You're like, I'm just not doing it. It's not your bag. And I get it because I know people like you, and I get it. But this is probably a good time where you do it for the next couple months, right? You're not paying for the subscription long term. And hey, hopefully we have the tools and the stuff that keep you around after this. But I promise you one thing. You want to get in our Nerd Film Room. You don't want to go to YouTube and watch these games on YouTube. You got to get in our Dynasty Nerds Film Room and watch this tape. It's all 22. Me and Garret were talking about it earlier before the show about how much of a better grasp that gives you on a player. When it comes to the vision and everything, how much of a better grasp it gives you on that player and what he should and shouldn't be doing by watching all 22. And we've got so much film in there that's all 22. And we just got access to even a larger library, which means we're going to be uploading way more film. Garrett's been doing it nonstop, uploading games. So get out there, use that promo code WINTER for 15% off, and you're literally watching game film for about, $4 a month? Right around there. $4 a month, and you can watch unlimited film on top of using all the other great tools that we have at your leisure. That would literally, if you're just into it for the film, it's just a little bonus. So check us out, dynastynerds.com. If you joined the podcast, we haven't asked anybody in a while. If you could leave a rating and review, there's a lot of people coming out right now looking for that new podcast, right? Because they're just getting the Dynasty and they need help. If you could give us a rating and review on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to us, it really just helps get the podcast out in front of more people. If you're watching on YouTube, if you leave us, subscribe, leave comments, again, anything that helps support the podcast, we appreciate you guys. Nerd Herd, we'll be back next week. We're doing a trade show next week. Am I right, Garrett?
Yeah, we're going to do a trade show for the free show. Everyone loves those shows, so we're going to bring it back. We're going to look at specifically an off-season trade show, and then a little easy for me to say, listeners mailbag for the Nerd Herd show.
Yeah, so hit up Garrett with all your Dynasty trade questions or just Dynasty questions all in general. We'll get them on the podcast for next week. We're on the Nerd Herd on the next show as well. Until then, we'll talk to you next week, Nerd Herd. Hopefully, if your team's in the playoffs, they do well.
Very well. Adios.